Hello, welcome everyone. It is October 25th, 2023. We're in Active Inference for the Social Sciences, and today we're in a discussion section. It is Avel and I, and we'll start off by just saying hello and kind of reflecting on where we're at with the course. Then we have the questions form that is on the course website. It's in the video description. Feel free to submit questions via this form. And then today we're going to look at the questions that have been submitted and not answered yet, and we'll just give some thoughts on them. Also look for more questions to arise in the live chat. So with that, what do you want to begin with, Avel? Feel free to give any kind of overview or statement, and then we'll jump to the specific questions that have been submitted before today and during today.
The only statement that I want to make is the last presentation I did. So prediction cause constraints to exist would be our wealth. Summary of that, but I don't have anything to say that is more specific right now.
All right. Well, this should be pretty fun. Let's jump into some questions. Okay. What are the challenges and potential solutions in using active inference to model collective behaviors with various environmental constraints?
So the challenges first is that in any model you have to pick what you include and what you did not include. So when you talk about boundary conditions, when you talk about what's included in the model, you have to make hypotheses. Like if I tell you model, I don't know, country that is under sanctions like North Korea or Russia. Okay, how do you model that? Do you make a set base for every possible product, like every dimension accounts for a specific product or type of product, and you have a 0 if you have access to it, a 0 if you don't have access to it, and 1 if you have access to it. Okay, but what if we have new things that happen that is not very useful if you're interested in innovation or something? So we'll have to make specific hypotheses that will try to specific questions that you want to ask to the model, and using active inference does not change anything to that. And where it is relevant is that you can have endogenous evolution of constraints using active inference. I think in a more meaningful sense than you'd have with a pure, let us say, Hebbian or like non-representational framework, or a framework that is representational, but where the space representation is like hard-coded. So there is a space of models, let us say, of evolution of social norms, where I think active inference would have an edge, because active inference is built to represent normativity and intentionality, and it is not the case, to my knowledge, of other, like either dynamicist or cognitivist frameworks for modeling.
Could you maybe restate and go into a little more detail? Was it non-representational or indirect specification of what?
Of the beliefs of the system.
So what's being directly specified? What's directly specified, and then what is being indirectly specified?
In active inference?
Yeah.
In active inference, you have, at least in a sense, correspondence between dynamical constraints, like information over where the system is, and belief that the system holds, that are akin to norms or like intentional states. So beliefs or intentions are things that are going on inside. And to my knowledge, there is no framework that makes an explicit formal connection between the two. You'd have dynamicist framework where you have stuff that happens and there is no representation or intentional states. And you have things like utility theory, where you have to specify preemptively what are the intentional states of the agents, which are not very relevant to represent like the endogenous evolution of social constraints within a collective system. Situation where active inference would be useful is to model. I will try to remember the term that Kaufman used. Kaufman and Fellin in so I will share the. Can we both share the screen? No, we can't.
You can add it directly in this Coda page. Probably a little easier than just go to the backend course Coda page and then follow the token. There. Yep. And then go to the questions table and pop it out.
I don't have the questions that is on your screen.
Just click on a little expansion. Challenges and potential solutions, and then pop it out.
Pop out what?
Just like next to the row, see this expand row, and then you'll be in the same place.
What is the row C?
Just
there is no letter.
No. Just look visually at the expand row.
Look visually at the expand row.
Just click the expand row on the question that we're addressing, and you'll pop into this campus.
The question that we are addressing is not on the page, at least on my terminal. So
are you looking at the public front end or at the course backend?
I'm looking at the backend.
Okay.
And I do not have the question, what are blah, blah, blah. Oh, it is a sub-question. What are the challenges? Okay.
Okay, cool. All right. Fun. You were talking about Kaufman, though. What was it?
Yes, it's a paper that he co-signed, whose main author is Tepoffelin, critique of economic, like I'd say rationality, but no, they say it's Boolean rationality. So the dictionary of cognitive biases approach to modeling human behavior. And basically, the point of the paper, as I understand it, is that you have an evolution of the goals and norms that shape a social ecology. And this kind of open-ended evolution of the intentional states of the agent, I think, can be addressed in a more meaningful way with active inference than with any other formal framework, kind of.
There are several other aspects, I think. So first, to kind of restate the challenges and then go to the potential solutions and the advantages, like the advantages in principle and in practice. You started with identifying like the major, any kind of modeling challenges. So ActInf inherits from all of these modeling challenges or areas that are difficult to step aside from. And then
yes,
depending on the resources of the group and whether it's 2023 or 2000, future time when there's different tooling. So that is just about the challenge of active inference sometimes compared today with more off-the-shelf approaches, which also may or may not work. But in an ActInf, you'll be spending your time making something that may or may not work, may or may not be orders of magnitude more just sophistication of a modeling setting than the team is ready to. Again, that's a general modeling point, but it's also very easy to get into with ActInf and to jump the gap between something that is pedagogical and helps show something like intuitive or cool, and making something, for example, that can be used in high reliability settings. And that's a jump that hasn't been necessarily conveyed in the open source setting, so it's difficult to see examples of, whereas there's kind of like production type machine learning algorithms that can at least be, no, that's just a little general point. So what are some advantages?
Precisely.
There's some really interesting concepts related to this, like indirect specification. So like, let's just say that we were talking about the mountain car example, or a social variable that seemed to be moving within a certain range. Then the direct encoding of that constraint would be basically made outdated. Okay, now the landscape changes, and then all of a sudden the mountain car can go twice as far to a different direction. So if that constraint had been explicitly encoded about cognitive variables, or about the X position of the mountain car, then the model goes stale. But if what's encoded is somehow a relation with the agent and the environment, so the mountain car has 10 horsepower and it can go left or right as its affordances and everything that builds from there, and then here's the laws of physics or mechanics such that here's the weight of the car, and then if the landscape changes or is modeled as changing, then you get, oh yeah, now it can go further or shorter in this direction. But that's like an outcome of the relationship between the agent and the environment, explicitly represented as such, versus just looking at the outcome and then putting constraints on the outcome.
Mm-hmm. Yes. To say, we have historically the concept of explanation that we have inherited from the 19th, 20th century is that we explain by having a lawful relationship between variables. And to do that, we have to pre-specify what are the relevant variables. And this is not a thing that exists with open-ended evolutionary dynamics. This is all in the Guénin-Carlut cognitive agency something paper. So, and so when we ask questions to a model, we don't want to have the answer, yeah, it will evolve endlessly. We don't really know. This is not what is expected, basically. So we tend not to look at open-ended evolutionary dynamics. I would say that active inference has some leverage to represent that other framework would not have, because of the relationship between like constraints as a dynamical thing and beliefs as an intentional state.
Yeah, one thing that makes me think of, so when we're doing modeling based, outcome based modeling, whether for hobby or for grad school, for job, like, we're often in a setting that either expects or rewards or accepts only a converging answer, because because it's being, does insulin in Drosophila change their circadian this or that? It's like, it's very converged of a question already, and it's something where we're looking to reduce our uncertainty about. So then that closes off, I mean, to the extent that it converges, it closes off divergent routes, not just of like doing and addressing that question. That's more of a methodological point, but then we don't make models that can see a more open-ended horizon of what could actually happen in the system, because that always adds more state spaces that can be broken and unfolded. So I guess, again, to the kind of kernel of the question, you've written these very interesting sequence of papers about symmetry breaking and all of this. So how do you use that in a way that goes beyond just stating larger and larger state spaces, or feeling less and less confident when it seems like a large piece of this is that certain aspects of systems are unprestatable?
Sorry, confident about what precisely?
Unprestatable.
Unprestatable. Yes, I'm confident that you cannot prestate the space of possibilities, of states of belief that an agent can have, and model of an evolution. Something that could, like, that is by definition of the terms, something that could be argued is that there is no such thing as open-ended evolution, but that would be a very bold thing to claim, and most people would not say that explicitly ever, because it's kind of obviously not the case. If there is an argument for it, I'd like to hear it. But the argument that are stated against the open-ended evolution thing are basically, you have, I would say, all rely on a confusion between the fact that the law of physics work, which they do, and the idea that the specific language that physics talks is a full and objective representation of everything there is or could be, which is, like, it's a possibility, we can discuss about it, but this is a distinct possibility that the statement that the law of physics work, which again they do.
Okay, cool. Well, then just to sort of close on this, ActInf advantages, many interesting conceptual advantages, we hope, analytical and more transdisciplinary or more holistically. And also another huge piece is it's connected to an always improving open source computational environment we expect and prefer. But in that case, linking a system in year X, social system or model, it's kind of like using a Linux system, that there could be some developments like in message passing algorithms or interoperability
Yes.
of different
Yes.
generative models, or category theoretic augmentation of models that are connected to the active inference ontology, all these different kinds of synthetic technologies, which we can basically already imagine and to some extent already have. It becomes a way to map systems to a lot, and that is not, as far as I understand, plausible without kind of a first principles and ecosystems of shared intelligence and all these other kind of memes and themes that we talk about all the time. Surprise minimization, things doing as most likely for them to do, paths of least action, Bayesian mechanics. Then there's a continuity of explanation with the rock just being there and the investor trading with this strategy, an instrumental unifying account that makes relatively minimal claims about the territory that includes the rock and the investing activity. What'd you add in?
But like what you said about message passing is interesting to me, because you have a broad coalition of physicists, mathematicians, social scientists, people in academia who basically think there is one language to nature, and what we do as scientists is to discover it. And I do not think that holds water, not only because open evolution is a thing, which is a sufficient argument actually, but if you look at message passing, if you look at quantum Bayesianism, if you look at category theory, open formally and conceptually, the possibilities that there are different languages in the world, and they may be more or less interoperable, and they may be non-reducible to each other. And then you start to ask relevant questions, I'd say. Especially when implicitly or explicitly you are interested in what determines the fact that a specific language works in a specific context. Why is yeah, I'm not gonna go further down the math road, but you have important compatibility / interoperability results between major fields of physics. I will give a reference by John Baez. I don't know how you pronounce it. I never said this out loud, actually. Baez. So you have important interoperability results in fields of physics and formal science. And we don't have a proof, however, that, all possible representation of physics are operable. How do you say that? Interoperable.
Interoperable.
Interoperable. Okay, so I said it wrong.
No, it's a great point, and what's really interesting is like the relationship between Bayes graphs. First off, Bayes graphs being analytically described and then computationally implementable is on the order of decades old. And then as we kind of explored just yesterday in livestream 55.0, the relationship between the Bayes graph and Forney graphs, which enabled message passing to be done procedurally to optimize a Bayes graph, which just brings all of these computational, all these analytical connections, but that wasn't understood until it was, and that was only slightly over 2 decades ago. So then, in fact, those kinds of results and developments reflect the changing social and scientific niche. So I don't know, maybe this is a different question, but science as a social activity, and then I don't know, how does that ground our work or give us more what?
So about the whole language thing, I don't know where it's at now, but at least 10 years ago, it seemed that you can have message passing, you can have you can have Bayesian coherence of state of observable that does not rely explicitly on the probabilities, as in a distribution that is embedded in a specific set space. You can have Bayesian coherence that preexists to the representation in which probability is embedded. And if there was a way to cross this and message passing, you'd have a pretty straightforward road to a straight account of contextuality and social construction. I say this with scare quotes.
Oh, great note. Exciting for quantum context and quantum social and scripts and constraints and norms. Let's close that question for now, though. Nice. Okay. How can... Oh, yeah, great question. Thank you to whoever asked. And again, video description, you can ask, it'll appear, and we'll see if anyone writes more questions during the stream. How can or does a framework / theory / principle of everything articulate with moral, normative, ethical, deontic considerations?
So I think it is addressed in a good amount of detail by an activist, how you relate a theory of biological individuation to a theory of ethics. I do not have a good grip on this literature, so I have, how to say, high-level intuitive opinion on that, but this is not like state of the art. And okay, basically, I'd say this flows well with Stoic virtue ethics. Things act according to their nature, so you may as well work so that your nature is good. And then you have recursivity in counting what is good and what is not. And I do not see straightforward analytical way to resolve this ambiguity. I said circularity or ambiguity, both apply.
Yeah.
So I think Evan Thompson has worked on that and may have a much better answer to how we relate theories of being and theories of ethics. Oh, Varela did actually.
Yeah. I guess my sort of short answer would there would be first, just we would have to hear a lot more even possible perspectives, but without even hearing them, can at least maybe say that there is an articulation and a meter stick as an instrument. And this kind of goes actually to that question about the Bayes spaces and what is preconditioned. So in what ways is the meter stick articulate with downstream ethical frameworks? What ought to be done, or just normative more broadly? There's downstream decisions that the meter stick is agnostic to, and then the meter stick is also a social result that is itself downstream of other norms and constraints, biotic, abiotic constraints, regularities of space, time.
I would say there is what we can do with a theory of sense making, be it active inference or enactivism, is to like just describe what we mean by normativity and ethics. What are the underlying natural processes? When I say natural, I do not mean by opposition to social. Those processes are biological and social at the same time, and that may bring reflexivity or distance to account of normativity. That may prove some of them incoherent or ill-advised, that will not give you a solution to what is ethical and what is not. Notably because like the most natural way to derive ethics from something like an activism or something like active inference is that both those frameworks are centered around biological individuation. So we may say that biological individuation is good, actually. That sounds sensible. But then the question is biological individuation for whom? Because you have a right, I guess, or desire, will at least, to exist, but so does cancer cells within your body. Who trumps who? I don't know. Not from a purely descriptive account. There is no way you can straightforwardly and ambiguously derive a prescriptive notion of good from any physics, any descriptive account of the world. You will have, when you make normative claims, you have goals because you are a living thing, and because of active inference / activism, we know that cognition is embedded in normativity, in the autonomy, in the biological activity of the agent. So the theory that you're framing is in some way motivated, even if you don't know how or admit that it is. And then I'd say from there, it does not quite destroy the project of an objective system of ethics, but it makes it much harder to defend. So yeah, I'd say you can derive a lot of negative results from descriptive theory of like, I wouldn't say ethics because ethics are non-descriptive, but descriptive theory of how ethics come to be. I would say that it is hard, if not impossible, to derive like positive results. If someone tried to do it, I'd like to see what this is.
Wow. Thank you, Avel. That last piece was very interesting. Many results, many ant colonies with their behavior to model, many real situations to understand social constraints and norms in instrumentally, with descriptions that are then in the discussion section of the paper. And the data are the data, and those are the descriptive aspects. It's a different kind of data in a slight way. But there's already enough to describe and interpret from what would be merely described, and it is very hard to derive positive results. First, it's a hard domain to make positive results in, not just ones that make people feel good, but by positive, like positivism, like justified true assertions about a metaphysical space. So it's hard to derive positive results about normativity and the kind of areas that this person asked. These are all areas that are and it's hard to use a quantitative theory, which is almost, it's an abstraction or it's just one language. It's hard to use that to make positive results external to the system. Harder to make external to the system. Positive results internal to the system are a dime a dozen. But then to really make that reflexive loop that you described between the what is and what we expect and prefer, which is actually woven up in an interesting way in ActInf, rather than two kind of diverged timelines, like what we quote expect to happen, like a prediction of the likeliest future, and then a second timeline that's like, well, what I would really prefer to be doing. In ActInf, the agent just has one expectation / preference, which loads up on the pragmatic value. But that gives a unified approach towards one's expectations of how things will be and what they expect / prefer them to be.
I would say that at vibe check level, Active Inference flows well with the idea that empowerment is good actually, but make it a formal relation would be quite hard. You could say that Active Inference vibes well with the notion that everyone knowing their place is good, which is quite the opposite. So I don't see an ambiguous relation between Active Inference and any ethical framework I can think of. I would say again that it like flows well with virtue ethics framework because of the relation between one's action and one's nature, according to Active Inference. Nature being here also in a term that is like maybe not the best term, but like I'm literally using a traduction of before Christ text. So yeah, nature is not that bad. Just not what we mean in the context of 19th, 20th discussions.
Yeah, that's a very complex topic with definitely a lot of rich work on like our cities and people, nature, are humans animals, and that sort of Homo sapiens type discourse. And then how does active inference frame the relationship with the niche in terms of entanglement or communication or co-action, intra-action, communication and influence through the blanket? where does that go beyond just describing? It doesn't have to. I think a sort of base level in what you referred to here is like that artifact, the product of the work, which is what the work is about, can be a jumping off point for other directions. And so the work of active inference modeling can be in what it leads to. It's not always internal to the model that the improved awareness or better decision is realized.
I can see one quite straightforward, and I don't think it is entirely broken way to relate ethics to active inference is ethics, like not ethics, normativity as a social phenomenon. It is a collective phenomenon. It's about social relationships. And you could apply a descriptive theory of human behavior and like human social aggregated collective behavior to find out what traits in a organization are prone to survival or adaptivity. And you could say that those traits are good actually by construction of what we mean by ethics. That could be a coherent claim. And then you could be interested in what traits make an organization durable. But this is the only logically straightforward way I see, but that would like tend to identify as good things that I would not see as good, like feudalism. It lived quite a long time. Well, feudalism, let us say old school empires with no claim to representations or power by the, how do you say, populace. And you could integrate, you could basically renormalize this theory, not around clock time, but around, I don't know, metric of lifetime, how much things happen within the organization. And then you'd start having something that is less obviously wrong. And you could have basically ethics be about optimization of specific parameters that can be addressed by a descriptive framework. But you'd have to make a lot of jumps to get there. And while I do not see an obvious problem to that, it is very possible that we would not like the conclusion of such an optimization thing. And again, if you want to model something, you have to decide what are the parameters of interest, and you can be wrong about that. So here again, you do not have an ambiguous, even at a purely descriptive level, you do not have an ambiguous application of anything to anything. Would say that more empowerment is good actually. And I would say this goes at many nested scales of organization. And I would say it has somehow something to do to the physics of biological individuation, but only in a vibe check way.
Nothing wrong with that. Yeah, especially with some of the recent work, like the variational synthesis with Eco Evo Devo, and the connections between the statistical concepts of persistence or thinkness from free energy principle related to remeasurement of the observer or the organism of themselves. That concept of repeated measurement being compatible in our work and in other related works, basically with fitness. If there's a height distribution of trees in the forest, and then a certain time point later, the height distribution is the same, that was stabilizing dynamics. We could say stabilizing evolution or stabilizing selection. If it moved, it moved. And so since there is such a coupling between things being as they are and basically what the distribution of what is there is described both this stoic way, but also this kind of evolutionary biology way. So does active inference offer any other or complementary perspective other than just the kind of strengths and weaknesses of using fitness, phenotypic fitness or mimetic fitness as its own justification?
To say that is to say that something is good because it exists. This is not a strong position to take. So this is why you'd have quite high level of difficulty to derive anything prescriptive from anything descriptive. But the function is not the same. You can make relation between the two. No ethics is purely blind about nature. No theory of nature is purely ethically unmotivated. But to have a formal relation between the two is probably not possible, at least highly non-trivial.
Okay, so to kind of close on this question, how does the free energy principle as a principle for everything and active inference as an implementable framework for applying free energy principle systems, how does that articulate with these broader, very deep and fundamental human social contexts? Short answer seems to be it's a lot like other scientific ideas, inherits a lot of their challenges and frictions and situations. Also, there appear to be some interesting, promising routes or themes to weave in. However, even with a very charitable or optimistic interpretation, there seems some, in principle, challenges with these areas that make certain kinds of claims perhaps not even within the proximate understanding we have of active inference. But people should totally write in the live chat or add comments and stuff. I mean, it's just an interesting question. Okay. Our higher order beliefs about doing better than expected at PEM, probably prediction error minimization, integrated into the architecture of the agent's internal model of external dynamics and itself in those dynamics. My thought here is that we have prior beliefs to fulfill certain self-evidencing expectations, e.g. homeostatic predictions, but how do those interact with these higher order predictions which appear, to my mind, to deny or negate the fundamental priors, insofar as they predict the agent to go over and above the levels of prediction error minimization which otherwise might be achieved by fulfilling those fundamental priors? They gave their thought. Let's return to the original question.
I do not know. Like, I know that a comparison to a baseline homeostatic level of prediction harmonization is a quite important thing in computational psychiatry, notably in the work of Barks-Holmes. I do not know how that's implemented actually in computational models, so I'd rather not answer approximatively. Ben White should be more informed about these things.
Yeah.
Or maybe you, Daniel.
Well, I mean, the word that seems to be doing the work is integrated. So, higher beliefs about doing better than expected at prediction error minimization, or we can just say free energy minimization. So this was explored in the affective inference work. So if the free energy was decreasing as expected, it was associated with neutral valence. If things were improving better than expected, it was associated with positive valence. And if things were doing worse than expected, it was negative valence. So, because of the ability to make hierarchical ActInf models and just hierarchical Bayesian models in general, it is possible to talk about these beliefs about beliefs, metacognitive beliefs. So it is possible to make models that have expectations about how well even an optimization process is going to go, and then a computational psychiatrist or whatever may associate that with the affect. How is that integrated into the agent's internal model of external dynamics? Well, shortest answer is to sketch it out how one sees it, and then it becomes either there or not. But just in general, if the internal model includes these higher order beliefs about doing better than expected, then that's the agent's generative model that then interfaces or articulates with external dynamics. So you could have some environment that has a environmental regularity or dynamics or that are influenceable or not. And then you could deploy two agents, one of them that has the baseline generative model, and the other one has this doing better than expected layer that the questioner is asking about. And then they can do parameter sweeps, and maybe adding this higher order belief increases the state space a lot, and so it increases the computational costs a lot, but some interesting pockets of behavior are found, or the behavior in that setting ends up looking the exact same, but in another setting it would have been different. A lot of these questions point towards very important modeling questions, which can basically only be pointed at because so much is going to depend on what the actual model is. Okay. Where can I find the recommended reading list mentioned in the lectures? So, where we have the slides from the lecture, they're in live streams. Just go to the big table and find the slides. If you find a lecture that doesn't have slides, just let us know and we'll add it. Where things were just mentioned in the lectures, that's a great question. And our goal at the Active Inference Journal, beyond just transcribing and publishing and adding captions and translating and everything of these live streams, we would like to also do more bibliographic work so that the books that people mention, we can also have in that open source versioned journal. So we generate the first version of the transcript, people update it, improve it. Oh, what was the name of that author? What book are they talking about here? And then we can actually have a unified bibliography section for the stream. So if that sounds interesting to you and you'd benefit from it, then surely many, many others will too. So if you're excited to do that kind of Active Inference Journal work, I highly encourage / recommend it. Avel, what else will you add?
Same. Like, I have nothing to add.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we can look at some of the other questions that were added that others wrote. People in live chat can add question, or they can go to the course website and ask a new question. Do you want to look at one of the previous ones, or do you have any other just thoughts you want to bring up?
Not really. The first ones were answered, so I don't like, and they were asked weeks ago, so there is a relatively low likelihood that going over them again would be very helpful. I think we can cut the discussion.
Cool.
But the important things that are not treated now can be treated in conclusion anyway.
Okay, so what are the next steps then for the course?
Next step is, did a lot of people register for the presenting in the conclusion session?
I haven't gotten any specific responses or like titles yet.
Okay, so we see if people do that. And
yeah, we can write another message, including even a short video message or just a written one, and then also ask specific people. Also, if anyone is like interested to present something, but they're not really sure of the format, or they want pre-recorded, we're just kind of exploring and seeing what the people who are following along live want to do, and also trying out things that we think futures will want to do too. So if someone has an idea on that, we're definitely open to it. Any last thoughts?
Nope, I'm good.
Cool. All right. Thank you then. See you, Avel.
Ciao.
Bye.